In this lesson, we are going to be converting decimals to fractions. And I think converting decimals to fractions is a lot easier than even converting fractions to decimals. And if you know how to read a decimal correctly, you'll be able to do it no problem. So if we have a decimal like this one right here, 0.50, if you were to read this out loud correctly as a decimal, what would you say? If you said 50 hundredths or even 5/10, you are correct. So what we're going to do is we are going to just write down as a fraction what we say when we read our decimal. So 50 hundredths, because the 0 is in the hundredths place. Or if you know that a 0 after a decimal can be kind of ignored, and you look at that as 5/10, you can do that too. So 50 hundredths or 5/10, either one, those are both correct, okay? And if you look at 50 hundredths or 5/10, you should know that 5 and 10 can both be divided by 5, and therefore this is also equivalent to 1/2. And another way to look at this is, don't forget, with some decimals you can also think of money. And if I had this right here and I put a dollar sign right here, well, I would have 50 cents, and I know 50 cents is half of a dollar. So I could also think of it in that way and know that it is equal to 1/2. Okay? So moving on to right here, I have 0.25. And if you read this decimal out loud, what do you say? 25 hundredths. Okay, so if I have 25 hundredths, that's how I would write it as a fraction. Okay? And this also can be reduced, and if you're thinking of money, you know that 25 cents is equivalent to a quarter, and there are 4 quarters in a dollar. So I know that 25 1/100ths is equivalent to 1/4 or 1/4. Okay? All right. Now if you were to say this one out loud, what would you say? 4/10, that is correct. 4, and it is in the tenths place value, tenths, so it is 4/10. Okay? Now that also can be simplified if you think of a number that goes into 4 and 10 both evenly. That number would be 2. So if I divide both by 2, what would I get? Well, 4 divided by 2 is 2, and then 10 divided by 2 is 5. So therefore, 4/10 is equivalent to the fraction 2/5. Now it changes a little bit when we have a number in front of the decimal, because that means that we also have whole numbers that we have to consider when we are converting our decimals to fractions. So we're going to do two things. We're going to figure out what this decimal is as a mixed number, and then we're also going to convert that to an improper fraction, just so you can see what they both look like. So if I say this out loud, same thing. If you say that decimal out loud, 1.20, what would you say? Okay, so we have 1 whole, 1, and 20 hundredths. 20 hundredths. Or if you were to say 1 and 2/10, that is also correct. In fact, when we're doing this, if we have 20 hundredths and we're going to be simplifying this anyways, we can just kind of ignore both of those zeros, and that is going to give us 1 and 2/10. But 2/10 can also be simplified, okay, because 2 goes into both 2 and 10. So this can be simplified to 1 and 1/5. Because if I divide the 2 and the 10 by 2, 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 10 5 times, that's 1 and 1/5. So 1.20 or 1 and 20 hundredths as a fraction is 1 and 1/5. And I also told you I'd show you what that looks like as an improper fraction. So if I have 1 and 1/5, to make this into an improper fraction, I'm going to multiply my denominator and my whole number. So 5 times, actually I'm going to write this down here so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so I have 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 more, my numerator, adding that in, 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 more is 6, and my denominator just stays the same. Okay, so 1 and 20 hundredths is equivalent to 1 and 1/5, or, as an improper fraction, 6/5. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and pause the video, try the next one on your own. If you're not ready, that's fine, keep it rolling, we'll work on it together. Okay, saying 2.6 aloud as a decimal, what would you hear? 2 and 6/10. Good. 2 and 6/10. So that's what I'm going to write down. 2 and 6/10 because the 6 is in the tenths place. Okay, and if we simplify that, okay, we know that 6 and 10 both can be simplified if we divide both of them by 2. So it's going to be 2 and 3/5. Actually, let's make that a little better. There we go. 2 and 3/5. Okay, and that's our mixed number. Now, if we write that as an improper fraction, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do 5 times 2, which is 10. 10 plus 3 is 13. And my denominator stays the same. Okay, so 2 and 3/5 is equivalent to 13/5, which is equivalent to 2 and 6/10. And that is converting decimals into fractions.